Today you're going to learn how to create an easy lavender abstract painting using inexpensive craft paint. I grabbed these for $1 a bottle from the dollar store, and also household items that you have lying around like Q-tips and a wooden skewer. You're also going to learn how to create a cool and inexpensive textured background using salt and a paper towel. So let's get started. The first step is we're going to grab our white craft paint and we're just going to shake it to make sure the paint is well mixed in the bottle, and then we'll apply it directly on our canvas. Now the nice thing with craft paint is that it's already very liquid and fluid, and it doesn't need to be thinned down anymore before applying it to canvas, which makes it easier. Now the next step is we're going to grab our black craft paint and we'll shake it again to make sure the paint is well mixed. And then we're going to apply just a couple of drops on either sides of your canvas. So it's going to be darker on either side, and then it's going to be lighter as we move our way down to the middle. Now black is a very powerful pigment, and you need very little of it to go a long way. So as you can see here, I'm just adding 2 small dots of black on my canvas, and it's going to be more than enough. And you can always go back in and add more if you want to darken it even more. Generally, it's easier to darken your color than to lighten it back up. So now I'm just grabbing a brush. I'm using a 1-inch flat brush here, and I'm just going to use up and down strokes to blend my paint. And as you can see here, the black is very intense, but what we can do is we can move our brush over to the white, and we can pull some of that white onto our brush, and then we can move it back to where the black is, and that's going to make the blends more seamless. So here you can see I'm moving my brush back to where that black is, and now the edges are more seamless and the blends are a little bit more smoother. Now you're going to continue using the up and down stroke across your whole canvas until you get to the other side and the whole canvas is covered with paint. Now I'm going to show you how to create that cool textured background I was mentioning before. I absolutely love working with textures. One in particular that I love is working with pumice acrylic medium, which you can grab at the craft store. Basically, it's a bumpy, sandy, granular-like texture when you add it with your paint. And one day I was actually just experimenting with a salt I had laying in my kitchen, and it gave a very similar texture. So here I'm using just normal salt I had in my kitchen, and I'm just sprinkling it over my wet background. Here I'm just sprinkling it over the top half of the canvas because the bottom half is going to be covered with the lavender flowers. But if you want to add the salt and sprinkle it at the bottom half as well, go ahead and have fun. That's the great thing with abstract painting and creating textures. You can't do it wrong. You just have to trust yourself and just go for it. Once you're done adding your salt onto your canvas, we're going to seal it with just one more layer of paint. If we don't seal it with the paint, what could happen is when it's dried, it could flake off a bit. So simply, we're just going to grab our paintbrush, which we use for our background, and we're just going to take whatever paint is left on the paintbrush and the canvas that's already wet, and we're just going to seal or add one more layer on top of the salt, which will seal the salt right onto the canvas. Now that was one way of getting texture onto our canvas. The second way is using paper towel. Now paper towel already has a pattern on it, and we can use that to transfer or stamp right onto our canvas that has wet paint on it. So what we would do is we'd fold our paper towel to a place where we like the pattern on it, and we would just simply use it like a stamp, and we would just press down in any area and then lift off. And when you lift off, you'll see the paint lifts a little bit too, but that's going to actually create the texture. And the pattern on your paper towel is going to be transferred onto your canvas, which is going to give you a really inexpensive way of getting those patterns and textures onto your canvas. Now you can repeat this all over in any place you'd like. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. You can create it at the top half, the whole canvas, or in just a section. Just go with the flow and see where it takes you. Now, once our background is dried, we're going to move on to creating our green flower stems. Now, to create our green flower stems, I use a wooden skewer, which makes it really easy to create those long, thin lines, which can be intimidating as a beginner to create with a brush. So essentially, we're going to be using it like a stamp, and we're going to be adding the paint right onto our skewer and then stamping it onto our canvas. I've added some green to my palette already, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some of that green with a flat brush, and I'm just going to paint it onto one of the sides on my wooden skewer. And I'm going to apply a pretty thick layer of paint just to make sure I have enough paint for when I'm going to be stamping it down onto my canvas. And then I'm going to take the skewer and put it paint side down on my canvas anywhere I want, where I want my stem to go. And I'm going to press down and I'm going to roll it just ever so slightly, just to make sure that the paint is actually on the canvas. And then I'm going to lift off, and there you can see the stem has been created. So now you're going to repeat this a few more times with this green color to create a few more stems, and then I'm going to show you how to create a few more color variations so you can create some darker and lighter stems as well. Now that we've created a few of our green stems, we're going to take that green and we're going to lighten it a bit, and we're going to create some lighter green stems, which is basically going to be mimicking light hitting down on a few of them, which are going to act as our highlights. So to do that, we're just going to grab our palette knife first, and I'm going to grab some white here, and I'm going to grab some green as well. And we're going to use our palette knife. I'm just using a plastic palette knife here, and we're just going to mix it. We're going to mix the white and that green together to create a lighter green. And we're going to mix it until it's nicely mixed and there's no streaks left in it. Once it's well mixed, we're just going to grab our skewer and we're going to clean it off with a paper towel just to take off all that excess paint from the last step. And we're going to take our brush and we're going to clean it off as well in some water. And then we're going to take our brush and we're going to repeat that step like we did before, and we're going to paint on that light green paint now onto our skewer. And then we'll stamp it onto our canvas. So we'll use the same step and we'll press it down in any area we'd like, and we're going to roll it just a little bit. And then here I'm going to swipe it down. That's another option. And as you can see here, you can see the difference between the original green color and the highlighted color. There's a contrast and it really pops. And once it's all done, you're going to notice that it's going to give a really, really cool dimensional look. So now that we have our medium green color and our light green color, let's create a darker green color that's going to mimic our shadows in our painting. So to create our shadow or darker green, we're going to mix a tiny amount of black in with our green. And we're going to mix it with our palette knife until it's well blended. And then we're going to repeat the same step and use our skewer to stamp those stems onto our canvas. Now that we're finished our stems and the paint is dried, we're going to move on to creating our lavender flowers using some fun Q-tips. I love using Q-tips in my paintings, and this was my very first painting where I used this method. So the first step is we're going to pour out some of the purple paint onto our palette. And then we're going to grab any Q-tip we have, and we're going to simply dip it into our purple paint. Then we're going to pick a stem in our painting that we want to start our lavender flowers on. So for this painting, the tall stem on the left-hand side was calling out to me, so I decided I'm going to start off my lavender flower there. So simply start at the top, and we're going to create the shape of the lavender flower. Now it's going to be narrower at the top, and it's going to be a little bit thicker and wider at the bottom of the flower. So just keep that in mind while you're working your way down the stem. In terms of technique, it's quite simple. You're just going to be using a light dabbing motion with the Q-tip on your canvas, and it's going to stamp onto your canvas quite easily. So, and also too, the Q-tip is going to hold quite a bit of paint on one load. So here you can see I'm just reloading it the second time, and I'm almost done the lavender flower. So the Q-tip does hold quite a bit of paint. Now you're just going to repeat that same step on a few other stems in your canvas. You can go ahead and pick any stems that call out to you that you want to add flowers onto. And also as a personal preference, I decided I wanted to leave some stems without flowers on them. I just like the look of having some stems kind of poke through in the end. But it's totally up to you and how you want to do it. Just go with the flow and add in as many flowers as you'd like. And also this is the first layer. We're going to be adding some darker and lighter tones to it in the next steps. We've created our first layer of our lavender flowers with our purple. We're going to create some depth. So we're going to take that same purple we have on our palette, and we're going to be creating a darker tone with it, which is going to be our shadow, and it's going to give us a little bit of depth to our lavender flower. So here I'm just going to grab my palette knife with the purple, and I'm going to add just a little bit of black, and I'm going to mix the purple and the black together until it's well blended, and that's going to create a darker version of that original purple. Feel free here to experiment with the amounts of purple and black that you add to get to a nice dark purple that you like. Once you're happy with the color or shade of purple that you've created, you're going to pick up your Q-tip, and we're going to repeat that same Q-tip technique, and we're going to be overlapping the darker purple on top of the original purple that we created. The one thing to keep in mind is we don't want to completely cover the purple underneath. We want some of it to still show through. So you want to go ahead and add this darker purple color on top of the remaining flower or lavender flowers in your painting. And then we're going to come back and we're going to create an even lighter purple color, which is going to be our highlight, and it's going to make our lavender flowers pop. One thing I like to do before my painting is done is actually picking it up and moving it and looking at it from a different distance and a different angle. And sometimes things pop out at you that are perhaps bugging you about your painting or you want to fix. So it's just a thing I like to do once or twice before my painting's done, just to make sure everything is working out. All right, now that we've created a little bit of depth to our lavender flower, we're going to create some highlights. So basically mimicking places where the light is going to be hitting onto our lavender flowers. To do that, we're going to create a lighter purple by using our initial purple that we had on our palette, and we're going to mix it with white paint. So we'll be using our palette knife here to create our highlight light purple, our highlight color. One thing to mention is when we want to create our highlight color, we want it to be very bright and light and vibrant. So just use a tiny bit of the purple into your white mix initially, and it should do the trick. Here I added a little bit too much purple at the beginning, and it's not going to quite lighten up to the level I wanted to, so I'm going to be adding a little bit more white here to lighten it back up. So yeah, if you just add a little tiny bit of purple to begin with, and then you can always darken it as you go. Now we'll pick up a Q-tip and we're going to use the same technique as we did before, and we're going to create our highlights on our lavender flowers. And as mentioned before, when we were doing our shadow or giving our lavender flower the depth with a darker purple, we don't want to cover all the purples underneath the highlights. So we want some of the original purple and the darker purple to still show through while adding the highlights over top. Before we're finished this tutorial, I just want to share a little bit of history behind it. So this was actually my very first painting tutorial I did on my blog, Feeling Nifty, and it was a Mother's Day present to my mom, and she loved it. Her and myself are actually named after flowers, so I like to give her gifts that revolve around the flower theme. So yeah, that was just a little bit of history behind this lavender painting. Here I'm going to quickly show you what you can do if you added a little bit too much of the highlight color and your other two purples are no longer showing through. So all you would do to fix that is re-add the layers back in. So here I'm grabbing my Q-tip and the original purple, and I'm going to dab in a few more of the lavender flowers there, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the darker purple. And then after the darker purple is done, I'm going to add in just a few of the highlight, the lighter purple color or flowers. So that's the great thing with acrylics, is that you can always fix things, and because you can layer the paints over top of each other. And the lavender painting is complete, and I'm loving it. It reminds me of spring and the nice weather to come. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you get a chance to try the lavender Q-tip method. It's really fun. Until next time, keep painting!